Kenny Rogers didn't just sing songs, he told stories that felt like real life unfolding in front of you. His voice carried lessons about risk, love, and timing that stayed with people long after the music stopped. One song, The Gambler, would go on to define his legacy, but the journey behind it was far more complex than most ever realized. Before the fame, before the awards, and before the world knew his name, he was just a young man trying to find his place in a changing music industry. There were moments when success seemed uncertain, and decisions that could have ended his career before it truly began. He wasn't always a country star, and his path to greatness was anything but straightforward. What makes his story powerful is not just what he achieved, but how many times he had to reinvent himself to get there. And once you understand that journey, you begin to see why his music continues to resonate across generations. Kenny Rogers was born on August 21st, 1938, in Houston, Texas, into a working-class family where life was shaped by both resilience and limitation. Growing up as one of 8 children meant that resources were often stretched, and from an early age, he understood the value of hard work and perseverance. His environment was not one of luxury or privilege, but it was one that instilled in him a quiet determination to create something more for himself. Music became a natural outlet, offering him a way to express emotions and experiences that went beyond his immediate surroundings. It was not simply about entertainment, it was about connection, identity, and the possibility of something greater. Unlike many artists who find their sound early, Kenny Rogers' musical journey began with exploration. He moved through different styles, including jazz, rhythm and blues, and pop, searching for a voice that truly felt authentic. This period of experimentation was critical, as it gave him a broad understanding of music and helped shape the versatility that would later define his career. Rather than being confined to a single genre, he developed an ability to adapt, blending influences in a way that would eventually set him apart from others in the industry. Before stepping into the spotlight as a solo artist, Rogers gained recognition as a member of a group called The First Edition. The band's sound was a mix of rock, pop, and psychedelic elements, reflecting the experimental nature of the time. Their hit song, Just Dropped In, To See What Condition My Condition Was In, showcased a side of Rogers that many fans today might find surprising. It was bold, unconventional, and far removed from the calm, reflective storyteller he would later become known as. During this phase, he was still searching, still evolving, and still trying to understand where he truly belonged in the world of music. Despite the group's success, there came a point when staying the same was no longer enough. The music industry was changing, and Rogers found himself facing a difficult decision that would shape the rest of his life. Remaining with the group offered familiarity and stability, but it also meant limiting his ability to fully express his individual voice. Stepping away, on the other hand, meant uncertainty and risk, with no guarantee that success would follow. It was a moment that required both courage and clarity, as he had to choose between comfort and growth. When Kenny Rogers decided to pursue a solo career, he was not simply changing direction. He was redefining his identity as an artist. This transition marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that would ultimately lead him toward the sound that would define his legacy. He began to move away from the experimental tones of his earlier work and toward a style that emphasized storytelling, emotional depth, and connection. Country music became the foundation, but he approached it differently, blending it with pop influences to create a crossover appeal that would reach audiences far beyond traditional genre boundaries. This shift was not immediate, nor was it without challenges. Building a solo career required patience, persistence, and a willingness to evolve. There were moments of doubt, as well as the pressure to prove that he could succeed on his own. However, these challenges also strengthened his resolve, pushing him to refine his sound and focus on what truly made his music stand out. His voice, with its warmth and sincerity, became the center of that identity, allowing him to deliver songs that felt both personal and universal at the same time. As the foundation of his solo career began to take shape, it became clear that Kenny Rogers was moving towards something significant. The pieces were coming together, and the direction was becoming clearer. What he did not yet know was that one song, one story, would soon elevate him from a rising artist to a global icon, changing not only his life, but the landscape of country music itself. As Kenny Rogers began to establish himself as a solo artist, he entered one of the most important and defining periods of his career. This was the stage where all the years of searching, experimenting, and taking risks started to make sense. He was no longer simply another musician trying to find a place in the industry. He was developing into an artist with a recognizable voice, a distinct style, and a growing ability to connect with audiences on a deeper emotional level. What made this transformation especially powerful was that it did not happen overnight. His rise was built step by step, song by song, and performance by performance, until it became impossible to ignore the fact that Kenny Rogers had found something truly special. One of the key reasons his solo career began to stand out was because he understood the power of storytelling. While many artists depended on flashy vocals or temporary trends, Kenny Rogers built his music around songs that felt like lived experiences. He had a way of delivering lyrics that made listeners feel as though they were hearing a conversation, a memory, or a hard-earned lesson. His songs were often simple in structure, but emotionally rich, and that made them memorable. People did not just hear his music, they saw themselves in it. They recognized heartbreak, hope, regret, devotion, and resilience in the stories he told, and that emotional connection became one of the strongest foundations of his success. Before The Gambler became the song that defined his name, Kenny Rogers had already started building momentum with major hits that proved he had crossover potential. Songs like Lucille helped establish him as a powerful voice in country music, while also attracting listeners outside the genre. Lucille was dramatic, emotional, and full of tension, the kind of song that immediately pulled people into a story. It showed that Rogers was not merely singing melodies, he was inhabiting narratives. That song in particular gave audiences a strong example of how effective he could be when he leaned fully into storytelling, and it helped create the image of Kenny Rogers as an artist whose music carried emotional weight. As his popularity grew, he continued releasing songs that expanded his reputation and brought even more depth to his catalog. She Believes in Me became one of those songs that revealed his softer, more vulnerable side. It highlighted his ability to express tenderness without sounding weak and sincerity without sounding overly sentimental. Then came Lady, a song that became another major milestone in his career. With its emotional intensity and elegant delivery, Lady showed that Kenny Rogers could dominate not only in country music, but also in pop and adult contemporary spaces. It reinforced his crossover appeal and made it clear that his reach extended far beyond one genre. This ability to move across musical boundaries without losing his identity was one of the reasons his career lasted as long as it did. Still, no matter how many major songs he recorded, there was one song that rose above the rest and became inseparable from his legacy. The Gambler was not just another hit. It was the song that transformed Kenny Rogers from a successful performer into a cultural icon. What made The Gambler so powerful was not simply the melody or the chorus, but the way the story unfolded. The song placed listeners in a vivid setting, on a train, in conversation with a stranger who shared practical wisdom through the language of cards. It was a simple idea, but it carried enormous emotional and philosophical weight. The advice to know when to hold on, when to fold, when to walk away, and when to run resonated with people far beyond the literal image of gambling. It became a metaphor for life itself, one that listeners could apply to relationships, business, personal struggles, and major life decisions. That is one of the main reasons The Gambler endured in such a remarkable way. Many songs become hits because they capture a moment, but The Gambler lasted because it captured a truth. It spoke to the uncertainty of life in a language people could remember. Even listeners who were not country music fans understood its message. Even people who could not name many Kenny Rogers songs often knew The Gambler. It crossed generations, classes, and musical tastes, which is one of the clearest signs of a truly timeless song. For Kenny Rogers, it became the defining centerpiece of his public image, but it also created a challenge because once an artist becomes so closely associated with one song, they have to work even harder to prove that their career is larger than a single moment. Fortunately, Rogers had the catalog, the charisma, and the consistency to do exactly that. After The Gambler, his image as a master storyteller was firmly established, and that image helped shape the rest of his career. He was no longer just releasing songs, he was building a legacy around narrative music. Listeners began to expect more than entertainment from him. They expected meaning. They expected stories that could make them think, feel, and remember. That expectation was not a burden for him. It was part of his strength. He understood how to deliver songs with enough warmth and conviction that even quiet moments felt profound. This made him especially effective in songs about love, reflection, and emotional endurance because audiences trusted him. They believed him. Another major reason for his continued rise was his ability to collaborate with other artists in ways that felt natural, memorable, and commercially successful. Of all his collaborations, the most famous and enduring was with Dolly Parton. Their duet, Islands in the Stream, became one of the most iconic collaborations in modern music history. It was not only a hit because of its catchy melody or polished production, but because of the chemistry between them. Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton brought out something unique in each other. Their voices contrasted in a way that felt balanced, warm, and engaging, and their performances together carried an ease that audiences instantly responded to. The success of Islands in the Stream also demonstrated something important about Kenny Rogers as an artist. He knew how to share space without losing his identity. In collaborations, some performers disappear into the partnership, while others overpower it. Rogers did neither. He had the rare ability to remain fully himself while enhancing the strengths of the artist beside him. With Dolly Parton, this worked especially well because both of them possessed strong personalities, recognizable voices, and natural charm. Their connection felt genuine, and fans responded not only to the song, but to the friendship and mutual respect behind it. Over time, that collaboration became bigger than a chart success. It became part of the emotional memory of popular music itself. Beyond Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers also worked with other major artists over the years, and each collaboration helped reinforce his reputation as a versatile performer with broad appeal. He could move between country, pop, and adult contemporary without sounding out of place. This was not an easy thing to do, especially in an era when genres were more clearly separated and audiences often expected artists to remain in one lane. Yet Rogers managed to appeal to multiple audiences at once, and that crossover strength helped keep him relevant throughout changing musical eras. His albums during this period also played a major role in defining his career. Rather than being remembered only as a singles artist, he built a substantial body of work that reflected the many dimensions of his style. Some albums highlighted his storytelling strengths, others leaned more heavily into romance or reflection, and still others demonstrated his commercial instincts. What tied them together was his voice and point of view. No matter the production style, there was usually a sense that Kenny Rogers was guiding the listener through some emotional territory with steadiness and honesty. That consistency helped build trust with audiences and made them willing to follow him from one project to the next. As his popularity expanded, so did his presence beyond music. Kenny Rogers did not remain confined to records and concerts. He also moved into film and television, extending his storytelling into visual media. This part of his career is especially important because it showed that The Gambler was not merely a song, but the foundation for a larger cultural identity. He starred as Brady Hawks in a series of television films connected to The Gambler, and these productions helped transform the song's spirit into a wider entertainment franchise. Audiences who loved the song were now able to see Rogers embody a character that reflected many of the values associated with his musical image: wisdom, toughness, quiet confidence, and survival. These television films were significant because they deepened his relationship with his audience. Instead of listeners only imagining the world behind the songs, they could now watch him inhabit narratives on screen. This expanded his appeal and made him even more recognizable to audiences who may have first encountered him through television rather than radio. His screen presence worked because it carried the same qualities that made his songs effective. He was calm, believable, and grounded. He did not have to force charisma. It came naturally through the sense that he understood the stories he was telling. His television presence extended beyond the gambler films. Over the years, he appeared in specials, variety programming, interviews, and other television projects that helped maintain his visibility. These appearances reinforced his image as a relatable and respected entertainer rather than a distant celebrity. He came across as someone audiences could trust, someone whose warmth and experience gave him credibility both on stage and on screen. That public image became one of the most valuable parts of his career because it helped sustain his popularity even as musical trends shifted. What becomes clear in looking at this stage of Kenny Rogers' life is that his rise to fame was not based on one lucky break. It was the result of a carefully built career rooted in adaptability, emotional honesty, and the rare ability to communicate with a broad audience without sounding generic. He was specific enough to feel real and universal enough to reach millions. He could sing about heartbreak and make it feel personal, sing about life lessons and make them feel profound, or appear in a television role and still feel like the same Kenny Rogers audiences already knew from his music. That coherence across different platforms was a major reason his legacy became so strong. By this point in his career, Kenny Rogers had become much more than a country singer with a few major hits. He was now a fully established entertainer whose music, collaborations, and television work had made him one of the most recognizable names in popular culture. Yet even with all that success, there was still another side to his story that mattered just as much: the man behind the fame. His personal life, his role as a father, the awards and honors he earned, the causes he supported, and the final chapter of his life would all add further dimension to a legacy that was already extraordinary. While Kenny Rogers was known around the world for his music, collaborations, and on-screen presence, the man behind the fame lived a life that was just as layered and complex as the stories he told in his songs. His personal life was marked by both fulfillment and challenges, reflecting the reality that success in the public eye often comes with sacrifices in private. Over the course of his life, he was married 5 times, and each relationship represented a different chapter in his journey. These experiences shaped his understanding of love, commitment, and personal growth, themes that often appeared in his music with striking honesty. Rather than presenting a perfect image, Kenny Rogers' life reflected the ups and downs that many people experience, which made his storytelling feel even more authentic. He was also a father to 5 children, a role that became increasingly important to him as he grew older. His children included Carol, whom he had during his first marriage to Janice Gordon, as well as Kenny Rogers Jr. with his 3rd wife, Margot Anderson, Christopher with his 4th wife, Marianne Gordon, and twin sons Justin and Jordan with his 5th wife, Wanda Miller. In later interviews, he often spoke about wanting to be more present in his children's lives, especially after years of touring and building his career. This desire to focus on family played a major role in his decision to step away from performing, as he wanted to spend more time at home and experience life beyond the stage. His reflections on fatherhood revealed a man who, despite achieving global success, still valued the simple and meaningful connections that come with family life. Throughout his career, Kenny Rogers received numerous awards and nominations that highlighted his influence across multiple genres. He won 3 Grammy Awards, including Best Male Country Vocal Performance, and earned recognition from the Country Music Association and the Academy of Country Music. His ability to cross over into pop music also brought him additional accolades, demonstrating that his appeal extended far beyond a single audience. Over the years, he received multiple nominations in various categories, reflecting both critical recognition and commercial success. One of the most significant honors came when he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, an achievement that confirmed his place among the most important figures in the history of the genre. In addition to his musical achievements, Kenny Rogers built a successful presence in business, most notably with the Kenny Rogers Roasters restaurant chain. This venture showed another side of his personality, one that understood branding, expansion, and the importance of creating opportunities beyond music. While not every business endeavor remained active over time, his willingness to explore new ventures demonstrated his adaptability and forward-thinking approach. These efforts contributed to his overall financial success and helped solidify his position not just as an entertainer, but as a savvy businessman. Philanthropy was another important aspect of his life, although it often received less attention than his music. Kenny Rogers supported various charitable causes, particularly those focused on children, education, and community development. He participated in benefit concerts and used his platform to raise awareness for issues that mattered to him. His approach to giving back was consistent with his personality, quiet, sincere, and focused on making a real difference rather than seeking recognition. This commitment added another layer to his legacy, showing that his impact extended beyond entertainment. As the years went on, Kenny Rogers began to reflect on his career and the life he had built. After decades of performing, recording, and traveling, he announced his farewell tour, titled The Gambler's Last Deal. This tour was not just about saying goodbye to the stage, but about celebrating a journey that had taken him from humble beginnings to global recognition. Fans attended these performances not only to hear the music, but to honor the memories and moments his songs had provided over the years. However, health challenges began to limit his ability to continue performing, and he eventually retired from touring, marking the end of an era. In his final years, Rogers stepped away from the public spotlight and focused more on his personal life. While he remained a respected and beloved figure, there was a noticeable shift as he transitioned from active performer to reflective legend. These years were quieter, but they carried a sense of completion, as he had already accomplished what many artists spend a lifetime pursuing. On March 20th, 2020, Kenny Rogers passed away at the age of 81 due to natural causes and a diagnosis of bladder cancer in 2018. His death marked the closing of a significant chapter in music history, and it prompted an outpouring of tributes from fans, fellow musicians, and public figures around the world. At the time of his passing, Kenny Rogers had an estimated net worth of approximately $250 million, reflecting the success of his music career, business ventures, and long-standing presence in entertainment. However, his true value cannot be measured in financial terms. His legacy lives on through the songs that continue to be played, the stories that continue to be told, and the influence he had on generations of artists who followed in his footsteps. What makes Kenny Rogers' legacy so powerful is not just the number of hits he achieved or the awards he received, but the way his work continues to resonate. His music was built on storytelling, and those stories remain relevant because they speak to universal experiences. Whether it was love, loss, risk, or reflection, he captured emotions that people continue to recognize in their own lives. His ability to communicate those feelings with clarity and sincerity ensured that his music would endure long after his passing. As we reflect on his life and career, especially on the anniversary of his death, it becomes clear that Kenny Rogers was more than an entertainer. He was a voice that guided, comforted, and inspired, often without people even realizing it at the time. His journey reminds us that success is not always about immediate recognition, but about persistence, evolution, and the courage to take risks when it matters most. In many ways, he lived the very lessons he sang about, making his story as meaningful as his music. And now, the question becomes personal. Which Kenny Rogers song has stayed with you the most, and what does it mean to you today? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you appreciate stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Global Vibes TV for more powerful journeys through music, culture, and the legends who shaped generations.